Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where we look for moments of hope in the midst of adversity. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I am so glad you are here listening today. Whether you are tuning in for the first time or you've been with me for a while, this is a space where we have real, raw, and honest conversations about mental health, life struggles, and the resilience it takes to keep going. Before we jump into the episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something that's coming up, and that's Valentine's Day. It's on Friday, and for some people, it's a sweet excuse to celebrate love and connection. For others, it's just another day, or even a painful reminder of loneliness, loss, or past experiences that weren't so great. If you're struggling, I see you. It's okay if you're not feeling the love, whether that's from others or even from yourself right now. And if you do love Valentine's Day, that's great too. But no matter where you fall on that spectrum, just know that your feelings are valid. If you're having a tough time, find something small to do for yourself that brings you comfort or joy. And if you know someone who might be struggling, check in on them. It doesn't take much to remind someone they're not alone. Now, today's episode is an important one. This is actually an interview I recorded back in 2021 with my friend and guest, randomlyjme, where we talked about cultural sensitivity, racism, and resources for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. A lot has happened since we first sat down for this conversation, but the topics we covered are still just as relevant, maybe even more so. The truth is, racism against AAPI communities is not new, but for a long time it wasn't widely talked about. The pandemic put a spotlight on it in a way that was impossible to ignore, but these struggles didn't start in 2020, and they didn't end when the news cycle moved on. From harmful stereotypes to violent hate crimes, AAPI individuals have faced discrimination in ways that are often brushed aside or downplayed. And the whole model minority myth, it's not a compliment, it's a way of erasing struggles and pitting communities against one another. In this conversation, Jamie shares her personal experience growing up as a Korean adoptee in the Midwest, struggling with cultural identity, and facing both casual ignorance and outright racism. We talk about what cultural sensitivity actually means, how to move beyond stereotypes, and what people can do to educate themselves and be better allies. She also highlights some incredible resources that support AAPI communities and help people report hate crimes, find mental health support, and push for real change. This episode is real and unfiltered, just like every conversation we have here. So as you listen, I encourage you to think about your own experiences, biases, and assumptions. And if something resonates with you or you learn something new, let's talk about it. You can reach out to me on social media or jump into the community discussion. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jamie about cultural sensitivity, racism, and resources for AAPI. Hey guys, welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I'm here today with a really awesome person. Buttons. Listen, the buttons are hard. The buttons are hard, for real. Hello, Bite, you were first. Rocker, you were second, but you didn't type first, so you don't get to be first. Triz gets to be second. Hey, Angel Me, hello, how are you? Who's that person? Who knows? This is just somebody. I don't know this person at all. No. Happy Mental Health Monday. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today. I'm super excited for tonight's conversation. I think it's going to be great. I do have my headset plugged in because it died right before we were going to get started here. So now I have that pesky cord that I'm going to be messing with, and I just put it behind me. So hopefully that'll help. But super fortunate to have Jamie here with us today. She is a certified occupational therapist, assistant, and therapy program manager, specializing in the geriatric population and also specializing in making sure that I'm taking care of my own hands with the therapy. She also has experience working with the developmentally delayed disabled population. She's a multicultural transplant born in Daegu. Is that how you say that? Daegu? Mm-hmm. South Korea, and adopted as a baby. Most of her life has been spent living all over the Midwest, although she did spend brief amounts of time on the East and West Coasts. She lived in Seoul, South Korea. Boy, my mouth just doesn't like to work sometimes. For 3 years during primary age, and her personal struggles and diagnosis are major depressive disorder, recurrent generalized anxiety, and cultural identity struggles. As she's gotten older, she finds it strange to feel even more connected to her heritage and culture now than when she was a kid living in Korea, but it was something that was also a huge issue for her as a kid. Jamie has 3 cats and 1 black lab and currently resides in Wichita, Kansas. She's currently playing a lot of DBD, which we've played together also. Apex and It Takes Two, which we played Apex together, and I always feel sorry whenever we play Apex together because I'm so awful.
But
listen,
it's fine.
I can spray and pray all day.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for joining us today to talk about cultural sensitivity, racism, and resources for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. I'm really excited to dive into this. So just thank you for being here. I'm really happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I do have some resources and links for you guys today. Also, fun fact, her username is not randomlyme, and I did for the longest time think that it was randomlyme, and it wasn't. It was just, just how it was. Just what I thought it was. Apparently there is a 500 character limit. So I'm going to post these resources separately from your Twitter, but there we go. Hey, Majestant. I'm glad you think that the guest tonight is hot. Hopefully you will keep most of your comments tame and in nature, and you're welcome to stay and share your authentic selves and ask questions if you would like.
And relevant to the conversation.
Relevant to the conversation. Let's keep it that way. Absolutely. So you have 3 cats and 1 dog.
Yes. Well, one of them I adopted. She will be 4 in September? Yeah, she's already 3. I adopted her a few years ago, almost 3 years ago. She was 7 months when I lived in Kansas City. And then when I moved here, there was already 2 cats and a dog. So we just kind of became this big, happy animal family.
Yeah. So you had a cat already. Do you consider yourself a dog person or a cat person?
I would say, cat for sure. I actually had a huge fear of dogs growing up. My mom had a college friend that we would go and see like a few times a year, and they were best friends in college, and then her friend also had adopted international kids as well, so and the oldest daughter was only a year older than me, and she was adopted from the Ukraine, so we would go and like have play dates every now and then. And I don't even remember the name, I don't remember the kind of dog, I think it was mixed, but every time we walked into their house, the dog, who was not very well behaved, would jump on me. Aww. And knock me to the ground. And so as a kid, it kind of developed this fear of like big dogs.
Right.
But I couldn't be happier with our dog. Our dog is so well behaved. Like if I was going to ever be a dog owner, which I used to think I wouldn't ever be, I mean, that would be the dog I'd pick. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Her name's Belle.
Don't get a whatever Ruger is, because boy, does he have so much energy and love to jump for sure. He's a great dog. Don't get me wrong. We do have a question queue open, so if you would like to enter into a question, just like Bite Mark did there, !Q, that'll put it into the question queue, and you can have it in there and make sure that I see it. Otherwise, just put your questions into the chat and we'll get to them. Don't know what language that is, Majestin, but one of the rules here is please use English, so use English or fuck off, please. Don't get a Weimaraner. Oh my god, I had a Weimaraner. My sweet, sweet Weimaraner died. Sweet Weimaraner died, and he was a great dog, but he was an idiot. Total and complete idiot.
I hear they can be.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are those dogs that are kind of bluish, grayish?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a ding dong, would fetch all day, like hurt himself fetching all day. Yeah. So how did you get into occupational therapy, and what do you love and what do you hate about it?
Well, it was kind of a long story short. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at the time, but I knew I wanted to help people. So that was just something I kind of picked. Out of high school, my dad wanted me to major in chemistry. I was really good at chemistry, but I thought it was incredibly, incredibly boring. He's like, well, you'd make a lot of money as a pharmacist. I'm thinking, yeah, but it's super boring. And then other people told me, well, why don't you go into teaching? Because both your parents are teachers, so it'd be a natural kind of like segue into what you would do with your life. And I was like, well, I don't really want to be teachers. I know firsthand, having two parents that are teachers, how underappreciated teachers really are and how underpaid they are. And that wasn't something I was interested in. So when I met my soon-to-be sister-in-law, I met her when I was 17. And she had just graduated with a speech language pathology degree. And I went up for a college visit. I went to the same college my brother did, and I went and shadowed her in some classes. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, healthcare. I don't want to be a nurse. I'm not interested in being a doctor, but this is still helping people and in healthcare, but without getting my hands dirty all the time, I guess, for lack of a better term. So when I went to school, I pretty much just picked that because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I ended up falling in love with, the whole process. And my major at the time was communication disorders. So I took a lot of courses on like audiology and communication disorders and development classes, type stuff like that. But after my sophomore year, I couldn't afford to go back to the college. It was a private Christian college that didn't accept most like scholarships, so a lot of the kids paid out of pocket to go there. And it was pretty bad. So I transferred home to work and kind of pay off some of that school debt. And I didn't have any intentions of going back. There was nothing wrong with the program. It was actually a really good program, and I really enjoyed it. But the college wasn't for me, so I pretty much went there because my parents wanted me to go, and that's where my brother went. So by proxy, I went there. So anyway, I got home and went to the local community college to see, like what would transfer over. And they told me that none of my credits would transfer, which was super, super upsetting at the time because I had 62 credits. Yeah, I had 62 credits. And so they told me none of my credits would transfer, so I had to start all over the basic English courses. And I think I tested out of English. I took a CLEP test. It was $100 and I tested out of English because I was not taking another English course. I had to take a speech class again. I had to do all the basics. And I said, well, I don't really want to start over because to become a licensed speech language pathologist, it's 6 years of schooling. And I'm like, God, if I start over, that's going to be 8 years of my life that I'm never going to get back. So at the time I was like, well, what is there that's kind of similar, but not that? My dad, who was a teacher, and he's also a respiratory therapist at one of the local hospitals in Kansas City, he said, well, what about occupational therapy? I'm like, what the heck is that? So he pretty much explained what it was, and I looked up a college in the area. Our actual community college had a program, and I heard really good things about it, so I applied kind of thinking nothing. At the time, I was working in special education at the local middle school. With the severely developmentally disabled. I was a para for a kid with autism, and then also a student that had Down syndrome as well. So I was doing that full time, and I was working at Chick-fil-A too at the time in the evening, and I was taking night courses. So I was like really busy at the time. I think I was early 20s. And so I applied to that school thinking nothing would happen. And then I got a letter saying I got in, and, they're like, you have, X amount of days to decide if you want to do this. And I said, well, it won't hurt for me to go to orientation, at least kind of get an idea. So I pretty much went in blind, not really knowing what I was going to be doing, but I ended up loving it. So, pretty much, for those of you who aren't aware, occupational therapy, we do a lot of, we focus a lot on the self-care aspect of people's recovery. It's very deceiving, the name. No, we don't necessarily help people find jobs. We do, sometimes we'll help people acquire the skills to get jobs, whether it's like the people skills or, just like things like that. But so they can work in schools with kids developing, like even just tying shoes, like really basic stuff, handwriting. I work with a geriatric population, so I actually work in a skilled nursing setting, so I get a lot of hips, knees, backs, broken limbs, people with dementia, Parkinson's, strokes, and basically we just work on that rehab aspect, and then we figure out where they're placed long term, if they go home, assisted living, etc. So I really like it, first and foremost just because I get that sense of being able to help people. I think the only thing I don't like about it is just the politics of healthcare. Those kind of get in the way sometimes from me doing my job. But in large, I mean, I love it. It's like the perfect niche for me because no, I wanted to work in healthcare, but I didn't want to be a nurse. I didn't want to be a doctor. And that was like, well, what can I do that's still, relevant to healthcare, but not one of those.
Right. Bite Mark said, I know you said hips, knees, and backs, but I heard hip, sneeze, and backs and was confused. Oh, that's great. So Bite Mark's question for you right now is, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, okay. So I was thinking about that. So I don't memorize poems. There's just so much in my brain that I cannot memorize poems, but I did save a poem that I saw recently that I liked. There is a poet who's fairly well known on social media. His name's Tyler Gregson, or Tyler Knott. And I saw a poem recently that he posted that I really liked, and it just sort of encompasses like the last year, but it's real quick, so I'll just read it.
Yeah.
It says, struggled, but survived the year, tied ourselves to hope and the promise of light, pin these medals to our proud chests, raise our fists to the air. We are the champions of endurance. So.
Boy, that's the truth for this last year.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was like really perfect.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Credits not transferring is BS. Credits not transferring is complete BS.
Yes,
for sure.
It was, and it was crazy because they pretty much told me at the time that my school didn't have the right accreditation. I said, well, how do colleges get accreditation? Apparently, they have to pay some ginormous fee to some entity. I actually don't know a lot about it, but they have to pay a giant fee to whatever entity accredits colleges, and if they don't pay that fee, then there's like certain levels of accreditation. So I could have in theory my college was in South Carolina, so in theory I could have stayed anywhere around that region and my credits probably would have transferred, but because I came back home to Kansas City, there was nothing.
That's ridiculous. So ridiculous.
Yep. Really dumb.
Do you have a serial killer or a true crime story that fascinates you?
I was actually thinking about that, and I don't think I do, to be honest. I should have put a little more thought into that.
No, listen, some people have some people immediately something comes to mind. Some people are like, not really, just kind of.
Oh, I'm trying to think of even the last thing I even watched, because it's been a while. I think the last thing I watched was when like Ted Bundy was trending again, and there was all these, like things on Netflix being posted, and that was fascinating and horrifying at the same time. So
I think the thing that I'm not through with yet is Hotel Cecil. So I'm in the middle of Hotel Cecil, but the last thing that I watched all the way through was Don't Fuck with Cats. And that is hard to watch. Like and they don't even show the graphic parts of the videos, but I mean, it's hard to watch. It really, truly is. It's pretty awful. Oh, Hotel Cecil, listen, it's so first of all, that story has always fascinated me, and I remember the videos and everything, and so to have it on Netflix, that manager lady, like she's something else. She's something else. I love that the poem question gets such a broad spectrum of answers. Yes, oh, absolutely. We've had all sorts of stuff on here with that poem questions. It's great. It's a great question. So we're here today to really focus on cultural sensitivity, racism, resources for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. What was your experience growing up as an Asian American in the Midwest?
That was a really loaded question. I was thinking about that earlier, and I don't get asked that a lot, weirdly enough. So I really kind of had to reflect on it, and it was different because I also have a really unique perspective as well, being adopted into a Caucasian family. So I'm not second generation Asian Americans. My parents I think my mom is German and my dad is Welsh. So, and they grew up in the Missouri, Iowa area. Um, it was definitely different. I think for a long time, and I grew up in a really tiny town in Missouri, called Versailles, Missouri. And I think at the time there was like, no joke, less than 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we lived on like half an acre. We had one neighbor. It was country living. So I think for a long time as a little kid, I lived that normal kid life. I didn't know differently. Um, I was thinking about it earlier, and my parents never really. I mean, I knew I was adopted from an early age. I mean, I couldn't look in the mirror and not know,
Right.
so it wasn't something that they could keep from me. But they didn't really address Korean culture hardly at all growing up, which, thinking about all this now, I thought is actually kind of strange to me, because in a way, you would think that, I know all parents have their different approaches to parenting, but thinking back now, that's just something they never really talked about. And the only times as a kid that I felt different was when, if somebody pointed it out, essentially. So
Right.
it was definitely really, really strange. And I think that as I grew older, the type of comments people would make to me, it'd be because we kind of talked about this a little bit before the stream, but like the generalizations, or these stereotypes, like, oh, you must be good at math, or do you know all these other languages, or people even would make these really innocent comments to me growing up, as saying like, wow, so you're super American, like, and I think they meant that to be some sort of compliment. But
Right.
as I think about it now, like, what did they really mean by that? Like, if I was more Asian, like, what is being Asian to somebody? Is it a thick accent? Is it, I don't know. I don't, there's so many Asian stereotypes that
Yeah.
thinking about all that now, I'm like, I don't really know what they were trying to get at when they were making those kind of comments. But no, I would say for the mass majority of, I would say, from when I was a baby up until I moved to Korea and then came back, so I was 8 years old when I moved to Korea, for 3 years. I think that first, like, little bit, it was just a normal childhood. No, I didn't feel different at all. But then I moved to Korea, and that was a huge culture shock. And it was crazy because my parents were missionaries at the time. And
I was wondering how you got to move to Korea.
Yeah. So long story short is, like, my parents were missionaries back in the 80s, and they worked with an organization called NICS. It's the Network of International Christian Schools. I don't believe it goes by that name anymore, but they've got schools like all over the world. And so originally we were supposed to go to Suriname, out of all places. So we had booked, we had sold everything, and we were getting ready to go to South America. And then it came back that they had filled the contract with another family, some other teachers, and so that fell through. So my dad came to us and he's like, well, I really still feel, the calling to go somewhere. So, your mom and I were in Korea in the 80s as missionaries and teachers. So, let's go back there. So, I moved when I was 8, almost 9. And I attended a school there, and it was an English speaking school. It was called the International Christian School of Seoul. And, it had, at the time, there were 33 different countries represented in that school. So,
wow.
Yes, super, super culturally diverse.
Yeah.
I think some of my best friend in 4th grade and 5th grade, her parents were the ambassadors of Guatemala to Korea. I had a friend who was from Finland. I had a friend who was from Bangladesh. Like, just, and as kids, you don't, in a sense, you don't see those differences. They're just somebody in your class. And so that was really, really neat. The times in Korea where I felt different were if I were to go to, like, the corner store or something to get, like, a snack or whatever, and somebody would try and speak to me in Korean. At the time, I mean, I grew up speaking English. I didn't know any Korean when we moved to Korea, which was pretty crazy. And so those were the times where I kind of started questioning my cultural identity. I'm like, well, I'm Korean, but for all intents and purposes, I'm not Korean because I don't speak the language. I don't fit into the customs, I'm American. Well, then but in America I don't look American. So that I think living in the United States and then going straight to Korea was a straight that was a huge culture shock for me. You go from a town of like 5,000 people, and then at the time Seoul was 19 million.
Yeah.
So
kind of othered in both places. Yeah.
Yep.
Laugh for purposes. First off, Jamie, my daughter says you have beautiful hair, but hope you all are doing well. I feel most people incorrectly pinpoint Asians. For example, refer to someone as Chinese when they're Korean. We were talking about that before the stream too. Do you personally take this as insulting or racist or just a casual mistake? By the way, you're both loved. Thank you, Kev. Thank you for being here today. Love you back. And I think that's a great question. Do you want to respond to that one, Jamie?
I think when I was younger, like teenage age, it used to insult me a little bit more. Working in the restaurant all the time, I would work headset. They can't see me working headset, and I don't have any kind of accent other than Midwest. And so a lot of times I would have customers get to the window and say, "Whoa, are you who I was talking to?" Like, yep. And they're like, "Oh, well, and I would get the whole like, your English is really good," which I thought was very like, well, thanks for making that kind of assumption.
No,
but a lot of times it was, I would just have strangers all the time come up to me and just start speaking to me in either Chinese or Japanese. They would just pick one.
Oh boy.
And I go, "Oh, well, I'm Korean." I think it used to really bother me as a kid. And I think now it's more of just I think people are curious, and I can't fault curiosity. And the most people in the world do live in China, so if you assume I'm from China, I mean, that's a fairly good guess. And I'll give them this. So Southern Chinese actually look a lot like Koreans. All different Asians, they have like their certain characteristics, but the Southern Chinese, for whatever reason, I mean, they're closest to Korea. A lot of times we get mistaken for each other, and I can see that. So I guess long story short, no, it doesn't really bother me. I think a lot of it just comes from, people being curious, and I think that they're just trying to connect in some sort of way.
Yeah. Rucker says, do Midwesterners have accents? I truly don't believe we do. I mean, there's definitely some accents in Midwesterners, I'll say. I know that there are accents in Texas. I turn mine off most of the time.
Does yours come out when you're like angry or anything like that?
It doesn't come out when I'm angry, but if I have been around my family for any like more than a day, then it comes out for a couple days, and I have to like tone it back down a little bit. Yeah. So you don't work in a drive-through anymore. I can't imagine what it would be like to work in a drive-through right now. During the pandemic. How has your lived experience changed during the pandemic?
It's definitely evolved. I think when this all first started, a lot of the decisions I made, I think were very, I guess, more fear-based, for lack of a better term, because we didn't know very much about the virus, and I work in healthcare, but I know enough to know like anything that is infectious is going to affect like the young and the geriatric population more. So I mean, I knew enough at the time to know like, wow, we've got our building has around 100 people right now, and at the time I'm like, wow, I've got to do everything possible to protect our residents. I think there was one time that I wasn't even directly exposed. I was around somebody who was around someone else that was directly exposed, and I think last year, March or April, I think I came home and I wore a mask for like 10 days or 5 days, whatever the recommended time was at the time. So I think my perspective definitely has evolved, and my life has evolved. I definitely don't go to the grocery store as much, which is fine. We have ordering and I pick up, and it's got its own issues of, them not getting things correct.
Right.
But
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't think, in all actuality, my life has changed a ton because I tend to be a homebody. I like spending time at home, and I always will be that way. It is strange, not being able to just go wherever. things are opening up now, so it's not as much as like that anymore. But I think when this all initially started, just like we're driving around and looking at all the businesses that were closed was definitely jarring. So
yeah, the differences in what closed and what stayed open was always interesting to me. What was considered essential and what wasn't. Yeah, that's. Yeah. I think a lot of the things that have happened in the last year and a half are things that, or the last year, are things that personally I'll probably keep doing. I mean, I cook way more than I did before. We order out, once a week, but that's really about it. And we used to order out quite a bit more, or go eat somewhere quite a bit more. It would be nice to go eat somewhere.
I actually think I order out more now.
Oh, really?
And that's a habit. And that's a habit I'm hoping to break. I think it's just because I'm attached to the convenience of it so much.
Yeah.
It's just, well, here's my DoorDash app or Grubhub. Click, done.
Yeah. I think it gets too expensive for me to order.
Oh, yeah.
To order all the time.
So I signed up with DoorDash because these DoorDash the most. I have their subscription. So I get free delivery. I think
makes a big difference.
You get your money's back in like 2 orders.
Yes.
Seriously.
Right. Well, I have the Walmart delivery subscription, so that I don't have to pay for delivery every time, which is nice.
Yeah, that's definitely nice.
By Mark said, man, sometime for a little while there was no traffic. Yeah, there's definitely traffic now again. Customers sometimes still don't wear masks and then give me a look for giving them one. I like to, whenever I'm in a store or something, almost always my 7-year-old goes with me because he likes to go places. Like, he's like me. He likes to go places and then come home. Like, that's what we both kind of like to do. And he has a habit of his mask will just slip down. Not he doesn't like pull it down, but it'll just slip down and be like right here under his nose. And so whenever I see someone who's wearing their mask wrong, I'll turn to him and say, "That mask goes over your nose, young man." Most of the time I'll see somebody else pull theirs up.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know we've made comments like rather loudly walking by people like, why are you even wearing it?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, seriously, why are you wearing it? It's just gonna sit right here.
Right. Oh, such a pain. Such a pain. Laugh for Purpose says, do you find it important to keep aspects of each culture in your life? I have mostly Irish in me and some parts of the Irish culture because of my ancestors I keep very close to me. That's a great question.
I do. As I've mentioned already, cultural identity was a huge struggle for me when I was younger. And I think in a sense it still is. I just think I get caught up in the busyness of life, or there are things that just take precedence that it just kind of gets put on the back burner. But like when things happen in the news or whatnot, or, occasionally when I'm talking to my parents, like the issue for me personally just creeps up. And I also have an adopted older brother who's Korean. He's not biological. And it's funny because I've had conversations with him lots of times, and he doesn't have any of the same, I guess, issues I do. He's never really struggled with his cultural identity. He's very like, he's a country boy, but he's Korean. He grew up fishing and hunting and fixing up his truck, and he loves all of that stuff. And really, he does not act very, I guess, Korean. He's not very in tune with Korean culture, Korean foods, and that's just him, and he's always been that way. But for me, I think I always struggled. Like, I had a hard time in Korea making friends with some of the other Korean kids. Koreans are, and I'm going to try and say this really delicately, Koreans are a very nationalistic people, and I don't think inherently that's a bad thing. I think having pride in your country can be a really good thing, and pride in your culture. But even in school, even with 33 countries represented, a lot of the Korean kids, were just stayed friends with each other. And I always had a really hard time kind of integrating into those kind of friendships with them because I didn't speak Korean. You were supposed to speak English in the school. That didn't always happen, at recess and whatever. And so a lot of times I would, walk up to try and insert myself into kind of these social situations as a kid, and they would immediately switch to Korean because they knew I didn't understand them. And I think that was kind of the big thing, like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm Korean, why aren't these people, accepting of me? So I think that's kind of like where my big, like that, and then moving straight from there to Kansas, and in middle school out of all years,
Yeah.
like those awkward years where like
Yes.
even wearing the wrong shoelaces, I'm being dramatic, but like even the wrong shoelaces could like put you on the outs, people like, um, but I do like to answer the question. I do think it is important for me to, identify as Korean, particularly now, and particularly in the topics that we're talking about today with, all the anti-Asian hate crimes and racism. Like, and that's kind of how my connection, because at the end of the day, I can't change that, you know, I am adopted and grew up in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what my life is. But I do have that choice to speak up for people who, heritage and ethnicity wise, I certainly identify with. I am 100%, there's 100% Korean blood flowing through me, and that won't change. And I think that in doing my research and educating myself as far as all the stuff that's kind of happened in the last year and even over the course of history, in particular with, Asian cultures and in relation to the United States, I think in a way that's kind of helped me accept my identity a little bit more. But no, definitely. I think that I actually really enjoy being multicultural and being, yes, I can identify with somebody from Kansas City or Wichita on several different things, but then I can turn around and identify with somebody, who I meet at the Asian market who's Korean, because I did have that experience in Korea. So that's sort of a roundabout way to answer that question.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of the racism that has been there for a long time is kind of coming to the front of things right now in the news, and there's a terrible tragedy with that shooting, and it's kind of getting a lot more attention. What do you do in the face of racism, and what do you wish you could do in the face of racism, if there is anything?
I think, well, when people are a little more obvious with it, which I actually up until the last year, I would say I really hadn't encountered too many instances of people being outwardly racist, like in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Like growing up, I got the stereotypes, like, okay, so I probably shouldn't have allowed this as a kid, but as a kid, like I just wanted to fit in. All through high school, like there were boys in my class that would call me soy sauce, or they would shout like
No.
Asian sounding, like down the hallway, someone would yell, "Ching Chong, what are you doing?" And like at the time, I don't think I understood the gravity of like
Right.
what they were saying.
Well, and when you're in high school, you just want to fit in, you just want to belong, and it's hard to reject something if it's attention.
And I knew they weren't meaning it to in a negative way. It was more their term of endearment, I guess, regardless of if it was right or wrong. I don't think I would say in the last year, I've probably had more instances where I've noticed it in a more negative light than I had before. Like I think I've mentioned before, last April or May, and I was trying to find paper towels with that weird paper towel shortage we had.
Yes.
And so I had to go to the grocery store, and I remember an older couple walking by me and the woman making a comment, saying like, my people caused all this. Like, and it just, I think when I encounter stuff like that, I think at first it just takes, I'm taken aback, to be quite frank, because, like, why would you, like, you don't even know me. You don't know the kind of person I am. You're just purely judging me and making that accusation based off of my ethnicity. So I think my initial reaction is that I'm usually taken aback, and then my second reaction is that I'm angry. I've never said anything to anybody, although in the moment I think it's just because I'm just so taken aback. I'm in shock, and then I do the whole like, well, I should have said the XYZ to them, and I didn't. But I've had a lot of opportunities at work because I work with predominantly Caucasian white Americans at work, and I've heard comments here and there, and so usually I try and offer my perspective. I'm like, hey, you say this, but how much research have you done as far as like the crimes, or what do you know as far as this topic? Here's my perspective, and here's why what you might be saying might be insensitive in a sense,
Right.
And a lot of it actually is taken really well at work, just because, when you grow up in a landlocked state and you never go anywhere else, I like to think people are very much products of their environment. And so when you don't get exposed to other cultures, then yeah, you're gonna have a certain way of thinking. And in a sense, that's where I kind of have to start with, and
Sure.
and that's where, and then I can kind of respond to them.
Yeah, it's hard to call people out. I mean, sometimes, especially in like a work setting where you're working with people and you have to keep it professional, I'm sure that that anger is there. It's hard to kind of consolidate that.
Yeah, for sure. There have been moments where even recently where, because I remember last March, all the time at work, I was hearing like, oh, China's doing this on purpose. There's like a biological weapon. And I'm just thinking like, this is crazy. I didn't say anything at the time, but there's been moments like, I think particularly this year with all the rise and attention to the Asian hate crimes, where there are moments where the humanity in me and like the just raw, anger that I have sometimes in regards to some of this stuff it's really hard for me not to say something at work sometimes. Like, look, last year, all y'all were saying stuff, and I didn't say a word. But because we've allowed this kind of rhetoric to rule our lives in the last several years, or however long, that's why this stuff is happening. That's like kind of the root cause of it. It's because people test the waters. They say something a little bit inappropriate. Oh, well, nothing happened. And then they say something a little more inappropriate. And then it moves to actions, and then it moves to hate crimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just so much. This last year has been so much just misinformation put out there, and Trump calling it the China virus just over and over and over didn't help. It only hurt. And that it's one of those things that the culture around that, and you're right, it's that testing the waters, because if they hear a leader saying things like that, then they're gonna repeat those same things, and if there's not the response there to kind of quell that a little bit, it just makes it all the harder. Rocker said, slow your sushi roll. I used to say that to Jamie, but after a while I thought this sounds rude. So even though she said, no, it's fine, you can, I still didn't anymore, aside from just then above. And listen, that to me is a great way to handle that. Like if you feel like it's rude, it probably is a little bit rude, but if you feel like it is, it's probably better to just not, to just not do it anymore. And it's okay to be like, that was not something that I should have done, and then just not do it anymore. I mean, that's a good way to handle that.
Yeah, I think there's a definite difference between having an already established rapport, like Rucker and I have, versus like if a stranger on the street said that to me, I'd be like, all right, what?
Right.
Come again?
Yeah, for sure. So are there some things that you love about being Asian American?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love being different, and by being different, I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm not terming that correctly. It allows me, I even thought about this question earlier. I'm like, how do I answer this? So, I do, because I think it opens up those kind of conversations with people that, that I can have, where I get to share my culture and or get to share my perspective, or get to share like, no, I didn't grow up exclusively in a landlocked state. I've lived all over. And I think that having all that life experience, or the experiences that I have had, I think that actually opens up a lot of conversations. Like I mentioned I work at a veterans home, and we have a lot of like Korean War vets, and that a lot of times that's how I open up a conversation with them, because I have to walk in, we get a new patient on caseload, and I walk in as a complete stranger, and it's my job to kind of establish a rapport and establish a connection. And I might see like a Korean War vet hat, or even somebody like a Vietnam War vet hat. And that's kind of where like, hey, so you've spent time over in an Asian country. And then we kind of open up the conversation there, and it allows me to kind of get to know my residents and kind of relate to them. Because, people like to reminisce, and they like to talk about things that are a little bit, well, they usually like to talk about things that are a little more personal to them, and for someone to take an interest in them. And so being Asian American and knowing and walking in already different, that kind of allows me to establish certain rapport with people that ordinarily other people couldn't. So
yeah, absolutely. Chat is popping off, so let me scroll back a little bit. Alex said random lime. I'm never going to live that down ever. First of all, you will just always be random lime to me.
That's fine.
Second of all, I admitted it out loud, and that was a mistake.
I don't even remember actually the exact circumstances of all that.
Well, so I joined the CCG Discord, and it was just your name. I saw your name randomly, Jamie, the first time on there, and I just, for some reason, that L or the J looked like an L to me, another L, and it was like, I thought it was just random lime, and I didn't think twice about it. It was just me misreading your name. That was it. And for a very long time, I can't remember when it was that I finally realized that it wasn't random lime. And I was like, oh, I felt like an idiot. First of all,
probably like somebody was like talking about me or something in a voice chat.
I think that's what it was. I think someone called you Jamie, and I was like, oh my God, it's randomly Jamie. Fuck. Oh, yes. Adam, hey, welcome. I'm personally thankful that the AAPI site seems to be inclusive of South Asians. Yep, absolutely. Different experiences and perspective as far as what you love about being Asian American. Absolutely, yeah. Likewise, I'm here for the supporting of our Asian neighbors, as I myself am Asian. Yeah, for sure. More, hey, how are you? Old people love to conversate. Boy, that is the truth.
Yes.
That is the truth. And I don't know if it takes a certain personality or if it's just as you age. Like I feel like every old person that I know or have known, they really do like to talk. Do you just not ever know the ones who don't like to talk? Is that what it is? They just never get to know anyone? Or they just
there's
really
some. No, I've
like
to some. But again, like working at a veterans home, like I've got a lot of residents with lingering PTSD, and so that's kind of the reason why they don't talk to anybody, to be quite frank. But no, and usually there's some sort of catalyst when I run into somebody that really is not looking to get to know anybody or get to know anyone on a personal level. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair and valid. Frost said Lime is so good at speaking. I love her. Yes, absolutely. Alex, you are not the only one. It's true. Bitemark said the older you get, the less you feel obligated to socialize with people you don't want to. Oh, that's a good point. So you should feel honored if someone and the older population is taking the time to talk to you. Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, and also the sad thing is in my experience that, unfortunately our geriatric population, a lot of them are seen, and I was discussing this the other day with one of my coworkers, is how unfortunately some of our elderly or disabled, and you could go as far as to include like people who are disabled as well. People see them as, in a sense, inconveniences, which is a sad reality, that we have. And so I think that a lot of times, a lot of them go throughout their day and they actually don't have anybody that they can talk to. So if they see the person in the grocery store line, or they see their therapist come in like me, or they see the CNA come by, or just anybody out in the public that'll even take a moment to have that kind of conversation with them, then they have a lot to say. Yeah. Because they probably haven't had that opportunity in a long time. Yep. I'll probably not be social in my old age, because I'm barely social now. Listen, you never know. Maybe you'll just have so many stories that you can't hold them all in. Can you tell us a little bit more about AAPI and A3PCon and what they do and who they support? Okay, so AAPI, the official name is Stop AAPI. So it's Stop Asian and Pacific Islander Hate. And A3PCon and the Chinese Affirmative Action and the San Francisco State Asian American Studies group, they actually all got together and created that coalition. And all of those groups on their own are organizations that advocate for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, whether it's offering them job opportunities or just continuing education, or whether it's like being a local community advocate for them as far as like whatever they would need. Some of those coalitions also offer scholarships on the side as well, specifically catered towards Asian Americans. But they all kind of got together in March of last year, kind of when all of this stuff started kicking off, and created this website pretty much to log and document incidences of Asian hate crimes. Because a lot of the crimes, I don't know if y'all knew, but a lot of the crimes specifically are against the older Asian populations. And if you know anything about a lot of the, at least Eastern Asians, grandma and grandpa types, they don't know English. So who are they going to report these crimes to?
Right.
Well, nobody. And so they kind of created this whole website to give them a place to report what's been going on. The website itself, you can report in 12 different languages,
Wow.
what your incident and what had happened with you. The website's also really nice because it offers like multilingual resources for those who've been like specifically affected. They advocate for local, state, and national policies to reinforce those civil and human rights that Asian Americans, seek, or that any American would seek. And then it's all on paper. You can literally go there, and they have, as of March of this year, in 1 year alone, they had 4,000 documented cases of Asian hate crimes.
Wow.
Which is a ton. And all 50 states there were, and including the District of Columbia, had reports. Most of the crimes are verbal. I think about 60% of them, whether it's someone being shouted some sort of racial slur on the street. A lot of the, I think shunning was a big one, whether, you might have Asian neighbors and people are not speaking to them anymore, or you go to the grocery store and you're not they don't treat you the same as everybody else. Unfortunately, physical assault makes up 11% of the cases, which I think that's a lot. 11%, out of 4,000, I think that's quite a few. And then it also covers like online harassment as well. But the website, it's really great because it pretty much just offers people resources on how to combat this, and it offers resources on how can you educate yourself, and how can you educate those personally on everything that's going on. It's not just like a website to just kind of spout off, well, this happened to me and this happened to me. It's nice because it offers all those extra resources and statistics, just to kind of spread awareness. It is based out of Los Angeles. A lot of the stuff that I'll mention today, fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of things are based like East Coast, West Coast. There's a lot less once you kind of get to my area. I was looking things up earlier. There's a lot less groups. But yeah, so that's pretty much their goal, is just to kind of spread awareness and keep it kind of alive. Because I know in the news, it's just like, what sensational thing can we go to next, and what sensational, but it's in a sense, it's their way of just keeping the whole subject matter alive.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Adam said also maybe they should choose. Words are hard. Maybe they should include support for Urdu or people from Pakistan. I don't know if he has one. You can forward that along too. I mean, I think that's a good. Surely there's something that they could include there. That'd be great.
Yeah, I know there's a place on the website for feedback in particular. There is a little anecdote there, though, that they're getting a lot of emails. So
I'm sure.
A little bit of time for them to get to them all.
Hindi's on there. Okay, so I mean, yeah, it seems like they'd probably be open if you submit that as something on feedback. And I did post both of those links on there, so it's on there. It's on there for you. So Adam also had another question here, and that is, do you feel like the hate or vitriol you have seen and experienced is analogous to what Japanese Americans in the late 1940s and South Asian Americans in after September 2001? I understand that the experiences are incredibly different, but it all came from our differences. That's a great question.
I think in a sense, yes, they have a little bit of correlation, but even if you go even further back from the internment camps, I read a really interesting article, and I don't remember the name, to be quite frank. I could probably find it if one of you wanted to read it, but I read an article that detailed all of Asian American history, and this isn't a new thing.
No.
History books don't cover a lot of, I think they cover like the Chinese Railroad and the World War II and the Japanese internment camps, but other than that, like Asians are largely not included like in American history books. But I mean, it goes far, far back.
Oh yeah.
When the Chinese were first immigrating over to work on the railroads, literal laws were passed at the time barring, I think at the time they barred women from immigrating over from China at the time because they thought that women were coming over and then selling themselves as sexual slaves. So they were trying to combat that. Some of the other laws they were passed at the time was that you could not be a witness in a trial as an Asian person. So a lot of what was happening was that there was all of these ghettos being set up in, like right in the San Francisco area, but also New York, kind of like the big hubs where immigrants kind of like to gather. But you could literally go in, beat the crap out of an Asian person, but if the only witnesses were other Asians, by law they could not testify in said case. So, which was awful. So, lots of hate crimes. Like our whole, it's people try and bury it, but this isn't a new concept, unfortunately.
Right.
I think that, and which I think will segue into the whole like model minority kind of thing. I think that's why it's been buried so much. But I think that's definitely relatable. I've been to LA, and I've been to the National History Museum there, and I've driven by one of the it's like a race car track now, but it used to be the site of a Japanese internment camp. Like it wasn't that long ago that all of this happened.
Right.
And I've had residents I've had Japanese residents as patients, and I said, how did you make it all the way out here to Kansas or Missouri? And they said, well, after the war, we couldn't, we lived in California, and we couldn't find, my father couldn't find a job anywhere. We had to literally move somewhere where we could find work, because that prejudice just unfortunately followed them.
Yeah. Rucker said, I've always seen or read about how great Asians are, rather in the U.S. or culturally established in their own countries compared to other people. While growing up, they're raised in a society with utmost respect and are well educated. But when this happened for COVID, it's just point the finger in an instant. Yeah. I feel like if this happened in the U.S., we, as in the government, would definitely try and place the blame elsewhere or say it simply wasn't them that did it. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. 100%. Adam said, I mean, from the time Chinese were brought over to work the railroads and beyond. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you mentioned this model minority, and that is actually what I wanted to talk about. It's a perfect segue. It's like you were a plant in chat. Because I do want to talk about that model minority narrative, because there was this narrative, for a long time, and it still persisted, and it still persists today, of that model minority narrative. And is that something that's harmful? And in what way is that harmful?
Oh, I think it's hugely harmful, because I think when people think of Asians, there's this stereotype that we are hardworking and that we're successful and that, half of us are engineers and doctors or scientists or whatever. But in large, that's not true. I did my homework for this. There's a huge Asian population in New York City. There's about 1 million Asians that live there. And I pulled directly from like the Census Bureau, all this, that, and you can look it up. But like the federal guideline for poverty in New York is about $25,000. And out of the million Asians that live in New York City, 44% of them are either near, at, or below that poverty line.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the ones that are working in the sweatshops, that are barely making ends meet, that are not educated. I think when people think model minority, they think of like the things that are in the media, like Crazy Rich Asians, or there's a Netflix show called Bling Empire that follows like a whole bunch of, I think, I don't know if they're Taiwanese. I haven't seen the show myself. I've just seen a lot of buzz around it. But anyway, it follows, like, again, that 1% population. But people see things like that, and then they equate it to Asians across the board, which is not true. So, yeah, I think it's very damning. And in a way that's also, I think it, like, I read this somewhere, so I'm taking it from a video I saw, but I wanted to kind of quote it almost directly. But by seeing Asians as the model minority, I think that almost demonizes and hurts other ethnicities in their communities, whether it's Latino or African American, because they go, oh, well, look, the Asians, they're successful and they're the quiet ones. They just do their work and contribute to society. Like, why aren't you? That's hugely damning to like those types of like cultural movements or the awareness that we want. And it doesn't help get rid of, you know, the very real thing of systematic racism, you know? And in a way, I think that's also racist to just kind of like assume that all Asians are in this model minority, you know, complex or category. It's not, it's just simply not true.
Yeah. Well, and if that piece of that wealth disparity in particular gets ignored to some extent, then they're not providing the right level of support for the people who need it. And who are still, you know, minority, like your minority populations get ignored a lot. And if you have something established that says that they can be ignored or should be ignored, then of course they're going to be ignored. Their needs are going to be ignored is what I meant to say. It's almost like Asian American people are people, just like the rest of us. What? Mark, what? I know. Donut shop owners around here be living good. Well, and you know, it's not to say that's like saying that all all white people live in white trash neighborhoods. Like, of course that's not true, but a large population of white people, and I say white people, I'm not trying to like compare the white experience to anything else. I just say that because I am a white person, but it's like you can't say, you know, just because there's the Kardashians, that must mean that everyone who looks like the Kardashians is perfectly well off. Of course, there are going to be exceptions. Of course, there are going to be people who have something that works and have something that's great. But Bonesaw, to answer your question, I don't think working in a sweatshop is a choice. I mean, that is clearly a choice that they had to make. But what other options did they have? And that's where that piece, that opportunity piece, I think gets really narrow whenever you're looking at what a minority population has as an option, and what an Asian American or Pacific Islander, what they have as an option, they get pinholed and pigeonholed to the point where they get excluded, and that's not something that is good for anyone.
And you got to think about, like, I think if just from the stories I've read, a lot of the people that work in these sweatshops, for all intents and purposes, a lot of them aren't young. So imagine coming over from China, Japan, or Korea, or wherever, you know, as a 40 or 50-year-old woman, you know, not knowing any English. Like, again, like you said, your options are very limited, and that's kind of the choice they have. You know, if you don't have the money or you don't have the language or the means to learn the language, you're going to just take what comes to you. And a lot of times it is those kind of sweatshop, you know, environments.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Rocker said, with the successful Asian example being shown, it's just hiding the problem with the lower population that are suffering. Exactly. Yes. Big surprise, America. They show what they want us to see and think. Yeah. And the wealth disparity, I mean, in general, is growing. Like, that wealth gap is growing hugely, especially during this pandemic. It grew even more at a much more rapid pace than it had been. And so that's an issue for everyone. but more so in a minority population, and even more so in a minority population where you have leadership of the country trying to criticize and trying to minimize their experience and trying to blame things on an entire population where it's entirely unfounded. So yeah, it's the successful, quote unquote, successful Asian example and that model minority narrative. And I think that starts as a kid too, right? I mean, so my 2 bonus kids are Korean and they're second generation Korean. And, my 14-year-old, he gets a lot of crap in school for not being perfect at math. And it's like, okay, we'll give him some help. Well, he doesn't need help. He's good at math. Like, clearly you're contradicting yourself there, buddy. And I don't think that it's something that is mean-spirited. I don't think that it's the intention to be. It's just that whenever you have that model minority in your head and you have that strength matrix in your head of this is what you should be good at, automatically, we were talking before about there's not a math gene that you can check and say, here, you get it. Now you don't have to worry about it for the rest of your life. Or if there is, I don't know, maybe there is. And can you find it in me and just tick that box real quick? Yeah, it's harmful for sure. And it starts early. Exactly. Bite mark, it doesn't take ill intent to do real harm. Absolutely. It does not take ill intent to do real harm. I love that.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I said earlier, how growing up I used to have people tell me all the time that, like, wow, I act super American. I'm like, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
I know you're meaning that in a positive way, but in the same sense, it's like, is that really positive? Or, are you just uncomfortable with things that are different than you? And then that's, I think, the core root of what they were saying.
That's it right there. What do you think we could do to eliminate that issue? I think you're referring back, Bonesaw, I think you're referring back to the kind of sweatshop and limited choices. And so also you said I have a lot of Mexican friends work at Mexican restaurants for minimum pay. Can't get a green card, but they've lived in the States for 10 years plus. Minorities in general get the short end of the stick every time. Absolutely. And that's what I mean. Like, that issue right there. I think that especially immigrants, there's a lot of things that could be done on a political level to support better immigration policies. And a lot of streamlining could be done. And I don't have the one solution. And I don't think that anyone does. But I think as far as the options go, there's got to be something that could be done. I don't know that we're going to come up with the solution on it here, but I'll take a moment and let you respond to that as well.
My answer is very similar to yours. I don't know that I have any one solution, because I think it's just been an ongoing thing for decades and decades and decades. I think the United States claims to be, this melting pot of cultures. In a sense, yes, we have a lot of cultures that live here and but how well are they represented? Well, in my opinion, I don't think they're represented super well. Or what kind of resources are we offering to them to, get their citizenships, to further themselves, live that quote American dream? We're not. It's really not happening. It's a lot of them here are cheap labor, and that's the really unfortunate truth.
Marker said, I never found the example I brought up, but the math today is way different than what I learned. Oh God, yeah. The simple ways to solve a problem are now different. Kids are told to solve them in a different manner. And we were just talking about this with my family also. We did Easter over the weekend on Saturday, and it was one of those things that we were talking about math in particular and how they get graded off if they don't solve it the right way but still get the right answer, which is frustrating to me.
Common Core stuff.
Yeah.
I can see why they do it, but it just I feel like it takes longer to get to the answer.
I mean, not to go off on a super tangent, but I understand teaching multiple methods. I am of the strong opinion that if you find a method that a child likes and can understand and prefer, let them stay with it. Sure, expose them to the other methods. Don't punish them for using what they're comfortable with if they're getting the right answers. Don't do that. And you're trying to inspire creative thinking. That's great. Like I said, expose them to the other ones. Don't count it wrong if they do it the way that they like to do it. And then, because that's just frustrating. Do the U.S. is a melting pot, but some have melted so low below the surface, and many others are stirring that pot with a rather abusive spoon. Yeah. It hurts a lot of students that change schools. Yes. Yep. So changing the subject a teeny tiny little bit. I know you love DBD because we played together, and I haven't played in a long time. I do think eventually my hands are going to be better where I could play DBD again, and I would love to. But I know that you love DBD. Not only did you mention in your bio, but we've played together quite a bit. How do you feel about the new DBD characters that they've introduced? And what do you think that they could have done better to be actually inclusive and provide better diversity of representation?
That's a loaded question. So I am always incredibly thrilled when there is an Asian character model to choose from in any game, regardless of if they're meant to be Chinese, Japanese, Indian, Korean, whatever. It always thrills me because I feel like I can identify, and I always will like gravitate towards characters that I feel look more like me too, even in like those character customization type games. Like I always try and make the person look like me, and if that's not the option, like do I have an option for a character model that's Asian? So initially, like my initial thoughts are like, I think that is fantastic. I actually think DBD has a lot of really good representation across the board as far as ethnicities. You know, they've got Koreans, they have Japanese, they have Hispanic, they have I don't know what Felix is, but he's European of some sort. Like, I mean, I feel in large are very well represented across the board. The Korean one in particular. So I actually think the killer looks very Korean, but I actually think they used like a specific like K-pop person and went off his actual face. In my mind, I'm like, was it truly to be, and this is all just speculation. So part of me wonders, was it to truly be more inclusive, or was it sort of well, K-pop is the popular thing right now, should we just hop on that train for the sake of hopping on that train, and then we'll generate more buzz about the game? So, and it worked. People were talking about the game a lot more. But as far as like the girl character, Yunjin, I think was her name. I was really disappointed because I just don't think her features at all were even Eastern Asian. I look at her and she strikes me as Caucasian. And I think that they should have put a lot more work into their source for that. Like if they were going to put so much work into the killer and make him look very, very Korean, I think they did a good job actually with him. But then just kind of to slap a face on a Korean character and then give her a Korean name. Like to me, I feel like, oh, they could have done a little bit more with that. Yeah. Like for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that, and that's just coming from, I haven't even played the game since they added, not because they added it, I just haven't played the game in a while, but I haven't even played the game, and just looking at the things that they posted and everything, it's like, this really looks like a white person thing, that you've just given an ethnic name, and that's not okay. Where the killer side truly does reflect kind of that culture and the facial features and everything. And so it's a little frustrating for me even to see that.
Yeah, when they first teased her too, I didn't read any of her backstory or anything, or even look at her name. When they first teased her, I'm like, oh, they new survivor, but she's not Korean, and that was like the first words out of my mouth. And then come to find out later, they gave her backstory, and her name is like, no, she's 100% Korean. And I'm just like, oh, we didn't. Or okay,
right?
We don't look Korean,
right?
And at the end of the day, like whether people like to admit it or not, like, you know, people of all ethnicities, there are certain characteristics, like facial characteristics and physical characteristics, that are uniquely Korean or uniquely Chinese or uniquely American or German or whatever, and it's like they took the base character model of whatever program they use, like pick female character model. It's like the original, like if you've played The Sims, you know, it's like they pick the randomize button, and whatever popped up, they're like, well, she's Korean.
Yeah. Well, don't hit that randomize button in art, because you'll come up with something crazy. That's the most random randomizer there ever has been. And I will say for DBD, like they get a lot of things right as far as representation. I mean, hello, like Jane is my girl because she's a big girl, and that's I appreciate seeing that in a game. And it's just one of those things that I was really disappointed to see them not take it as far as I think that they should have. She is thick, and I appreciate a thick character for sure, because like you were saying, you want a character that looks like you. You want a character that represents you, that you can, you know, connect with. I understand it's just a video game, but it matters. It makes a difference, a big difference for a lot of people.
It does.
So cultural sensitivity is being aware that cultural differences and similarities between people exist without assigning them a value, positive or negative, better or worse, right or wrong. Are there some ways that people who are not Asian American or Pacific Islander can work towards cultural sensitivity? And what do you feel would be most helpful for other people to do?
Yeah, I think that it doesn't need to be overly complicated. I think that even just asking somebody what is appropriate or not appropriate, you know, before you ask a question, you know, in regards to somebody's ethnicity or culture, and you know, pose it from a baseline of like, I'm just genuinely curious to know more about you. I think it's just kind of how you present it, you know, because I think you can encounter people all over who mean well, like we've talked about over and over so far, who mean well but don't convey it in a very eloquent way, or in a way that, you know, seems very sensitive. So I think it's just taking a minute to even just think about what you're going to say instead of just like blurting out the first thing that comes to mind, because, you know, I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with asking if something is okay to ask, is what I'm saying. Like, if you don't truly know, don't assume, you know, and again, just if you're even just curious about somebody's culture, just asking like, hey, do you mind if I sit down with you sometime? I'd love to just learn more about you and what makes you you. Like, even something like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I like about trying to get to know someone, is that yes, their culture that they grew up in is part of them. Yes, their heritage is a part of them, but that's not all of them. You know, that's not everything about them. And if you phrase it that way, if you say, you know, hey, I just want to get to know more about you. Can we sit down sometime and talk? Sure, that can be part of the conversation. But then that sensitivity piece of it is, let's also incorporate that into your larger life narrative, right? Let's find out what you learned from the way that you grew up, whether you grew up somewhere else or you grew up here in the Midwest. Let's talk about your whole life experience versus just this one teeny tiny piece of you.
Yeah, it's not like I wake up every morning and look in the mirror like, I'm Korean, I'm going to make sure everyone knows I'm Korean, like, etc. Like, no, I wake up in the morning like everybody else, and I get ready and I go to work, and I you know, desire to do my job and do it well. Like, that's just at the end of the day. Right.
Bite Mark said, not to get too far off track, I get frustrated in games where the bigger customization options are just increasing the boobs and butt. Like, I want to build like a hammer thrower. Champ, please. Yes, absolutely. I do like that about Ark, that you can like make the beastly forearms if you want.
Crazy.
Yes.
Oh, my goal every time I made an Ark character was actually to make them look as disgusting as possible. So I'd make these like little tight, which was horrible because then you couldn't like see over like rocks and shit. So like you'd make them really, really small with like these giant arms and giant legs, but then like you couldn't see anything as you're running through the jungles.
Yep. Yeah, my character in Ark has big, thick legs. Big old legs. That's the best part of having different cultures, being able to share them with each other. Yeah, Frost, absolutely. You wake up and debate hitting the snooze like the rest of us. I don't debate hitting the snooze. I hit the snooze. That's what I hit.
I'll hit it, but I'm pretty good at only hitting it just once. I'm not like the repeat snoozer. I don't know how people do that.
I have multiple alarms daily. But I do have I do know if I don't get up, like it's in my brain that I know what time I have to get up. Absolutely have to be up by this time. I don't know why I don't just set one alarm for that time, because I know I'm going to push it to that time. I know I'm going to every day. More, that's what I need to do. I need to set it at the latest point possible. and just go on from there. So we talked about a couple of the resources for Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. Can you talk a little bit about your favorite ones and the ones that you rely on personally?
There's a couple that really kind of speak to me a little bit more. One's like, I think more of a surface level. I just like it. But one's called the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and they have 30 different chapters. So they have it like everywhere. I kind of looked it up. So there's plenty in Texas. There's some in my area. There's in Kansas City, LA, New York. Pretty much every major city has its own little network. And what they do is they elect. It's a community of like all Asian elected officials, for lack of a better term. And what they do is help spread cultural awareness like in the workplace, offering opportunities for jobs, workshops for continuing education. And pretty much every major city has one of these entities, which is I thought was neat. The other one, which I like on a more personal level, is called the Asian Mental Health Collective. And something that a lot of people don't know is there are a very like low percentage of Asian Americans that actually go see any mental health professionals. Mental health is very, very stigmatized culturally in Asian cultures. A lot of it's based off of Confucianism. A lot of it's based off religion and just culture. So at least for Korean culture, I can speak to that. So with Confucianism, they are you're never supposed to show your vast range of like emotions. You're supposed to like keep things in and be that model person of society. You're not supposed to speak up essentially. So you're taught to bury your feelings from a very young age. And so I like this collective because they work to kind of break that stigma. There's tons of articles of like why, there are very few Asians that show up to, therapy sessions, or, what is it still seen as? In Asian cultures, if you talk about your mental health or talk about depression or anything, that like you're just seen as straight up crazy, and that you should just not make everybody uncomfortable with that kind of talk and just figure it out. So I really like that resource because I think they really do a good job of just kind of laying it out very specifically of, yes, we know you've grown up in these kind of cultures where you're told that, depression, anxiety really don't exist, or you should bury it like everybody else and just figure it out. You don't have to. There are resources that can help you. There are people you can talk to. There are other Asians that go through the exact same thing. I was reading statistics earlier about like just major depressive disorder, and it's, huge in China and Korea and Japan. It's just, culturally, it's, the pressures of society to succeed, or all that kind of thing comes into play, or to take care of your family or things like that. It's like those are what they want you to focus on. Yeah. The mental health thing just shouldn't exist. So right. Yeah. But it's AsianMHC.org if anybody wants to check it out. I think they have a lot of interesting reads on there as far as like specifically Asian catered mental health topics.
Laughter is very highly stigmatized in Asia, mostly Korea. Only 7% of Koreans seek professional treatment. And that's something, that I wish it wasn't that way for everyone, and for very personal reasons. I wish that those kinds of things weren't stigmatized. I wish that everyone knew that it was okay to get help and it's okay to show emotions. But that is, when it's something that's driven into you from childhood of you don't show emotions, you don't speak up, those kinds of things are really hard to overcome, for sure. I would not do well in that because I literally cry every time I watch a Glee. So, it just doesn't matter. Like my 14-year-old and I were watching Glee yesterday, and I'm just like bawling. I had to reach for a tissue on the table, but yeah. And even the crazy thing is, at least with Korean culture too,
it's not just negative emotions they don't want you to share. They don't want you to share like overly like excited emotions either. I developed this really bad habit, and I still do it occasionally because it gets pointed out to me all the time. But if I'm laughing, like straight on laughing, full on smile laugh, I will cover my mouth. And that is a very Korean thing to do, is because they don't want a full smile on a Korean is like showing way too much of yourself. So culturally, a lot of the women do it in particular, is when they're laughing, they cover their smiles.
Yeah.
So it's just, don't show emotion. I don't know. I'm the same way. I cry at the drop of a pin, and I love to laugh, and like I just doesn't work for me.
Right. So does what you have lived through help you relate to others in some way? And have there been times where your experiences and background have helped you connect with someone else?
Oh, definitely. I think I touched on this earlier, just particularly with work and being able to establish this kind of connections with our veterans, because veteran population is very, very difficult to work with, because you already, so many of them have all of these comorbidities anyway and health issues, and then you have to go in, and 9 times out of 10 they also have mental health disorder diagnosis that you have to deal with, whether it's depression or anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, and every day I'm dealing with individuals that might have one thing or a combination of all of these things. But again, if I know that they're a veteran of any kind, it's even, they don't even have to be a Korean War vet or Vietnam vet. It's just literally like, oh, you were in the military for a little bit. What branch? Oh, you were in this branch. Did you ever travel? Like, and then we get to talking about, even something if I can connect on just one little thing, a lot of times that helps me open up the door for what I'm really trying to accomplish with my patients is therapies, and helping them get better on that physical level. But a lot of times what people don't understand is you have to connect with them on that mental level first before they even open themselves up to you to do what you want them to do physically. Yeah, it definitely helps to make that connection. For sure. Be yourself, but not too much. Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Laugh for purposes, reading about Korea and mental health, I've always heard the older generation consider it weak to talk about mental health. And this has led to a huge increase in alcoholism in the country. Is this true? Yes. I mean, Koreans are stereotypically, Koreans like to drink anyway. It's just a lot high rates of drinking, high rates of smoking in Korea. So I think that's just kind of how they deal with their issues. To be quite frank, that's just, it's rampant over there. Just do what I do and master the art of crying out of only one eye. Boom, cry right next to someone. They can't tell because the tears are on the other side. No, I can't do that. It's just out of all of them. Hello, trucker ducky. Boy, that's challenging to say. But hello. Sounds like Texans. The don't talk about mental health. Don't show your feelings. Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think if I were to watch Glee with my extended family, or anything, let's be real, literally anything. If we were to watch TV that wasn't football, because every time we get together, it's just watching football. Every holiday, there's like some sort of game on. If we were to watch anything together and they were to see me crying, most of them would be like, what is wrong with you? Yep. Yeah, and turning to drinking and smoking. Suck it up. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Yep, for sure. So if you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path, what would you be doing or have done instead? And this could be anything at all. I actually know the answer to this. I'd be a dermatologist. I would be that person. I'm sure all of you have heard of Dr. Pimple Popper, whether or not you watch her videos or not, but I do. Love all of that. I just think there's something like really satisfying about all the stuff she does. And I would right up my alley. I'd love to do that. Yeah. I had, my mom was friends with a dermatologist, and they used to go on like kind of double dates all the time. I would babysit for them.
And I remember before prom, first of all, I borrowed a dress from her. It was beautiful, beautiful black dress, gorgeous stitching on it. But I remember right before prom, I had a pimple and she was like, let me take care of that for you just real quick. It's not going to hurt. And she used one of her little tools and just took care of it real quick. And you couldn't tell at all, where normally, when I squeeze one, you can tell that I squeezed it. Yes, I love all of that. All of that stuff is always fantastic. Yep. The only thing that gets me is whenever they pop something that's like a, it's not a pimple. The really big ones that can get like huge and then they pop that. A cyst, because I can't imagine how awful that smells. And that gets to me just thinking about the smell.
Yeah. I can't speak to smells. The smells I smell in a nursing home every single day. I think
true.
I'm not immune to it, but it's just it's normal now. I can eat a sandwich and walk down the hallway and it smell like all sorts of smells. So
right. That's true. I
definitely get that. I think it like splattering on me would get me more than the smell would.
Yeah. Well, sometimes she wears that shield over her face. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're covered there, how did it even get that big? I'm always interested in the backstories of how something got to be the size that it is. But when I imagine something about popping it, it's always a smell that gets me. But I love all of those. They're fantastic. And the before and afters of all of her videos are wonderful. It is time for the Disney magic moment. And of course I have my wand here. So I'm going to wave this little magic wand and you get to eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health. And what is it that you are eliminating? And I'll go ahead and wave that for you. Turn off. There we go.
Okay, so I was thinking about this earlier, and I was I think in my mind I was overcomplicating it, but I think that even talking about any kind of mental health is still stigmatized. Like, we'll go to work, and you'll say, like, hey, how's your evening? And somebody might say, oh, I had a really bad headache, or whatever. Like, oh, I'm sorry, did you take anything for it? But to have the same conversation, to go to work and say, like, hey, I was, like, really struggling with my anxiety, or my depression was just hit me out of nowhere. Like, people can't do that still. And I feel like, the world would be a much better place, and communication would be just so much better, even in your interpersonal relationships, if people felt like they could just be open like that. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are very fortunate to have those systems in place where they can be that candid. But I think in large, it's still, society as a whole is not very accepting of even just talking about those type of struggles. So I would eliminate that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that I see all the time, just because it's one of those things that I of course here talk very openly, and of course in all the communities I'm a part of, I talk very openly about my struggles and really reveal kind of true feelings kind of thing. But I don't necessarily do that at work. It's one of those things that it's just still, I just don't think we're quite there yet. And I wish to God that we were, because boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to be real all the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's that fear of being singled out for being too different, Yes. Nobody wants to be too different or be seen as the quote unquote crazy person. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the way they are. You don't ever want that to follow you. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why a lot of times people, even like myself, I don't feel comfortable about just being as candid as I could be about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm pretty fortunate to be. I'm very fortunate to be a positive mental health champion at my work, because then I do get to be a little bit more open about it. But honestly, like, there aren't many people at work who do open up about theirs at all, which is a little sad. Laugh for a Purpose says, much love sent. Mama, love you. And Jamie, thank you for being you. The world is a better place because you're in it. I have to run. It's Monday. Thank you so much, Kat, for being here. Appreciate you. I live in America and have been trained to avoid the doctor. That's how a cyst got that big. Yes. Abscesses are another story. Ooh, I bet those stink too. I don't know why I'm so caught up on the smell. Like, I had kids. I know smells. Taboo, yeah, for sure. My CEO wouldn't like me if I could be real. Very fortunate to have met you. You mean, yes, Frost. I am very fortunate to have met you, for sure. When you're a kid, be yourself and who you are. And then as an adult, oh, no, not that. Mm-mm.
Yep.
Don't do that or say those things. Yeah. Bite Mark put a question in the question queue. Whose smoke detector needs new batteries? It's not mine.
Sorry. Oh my gosh, you guys have been hearing that the whole time. Sorry.
Listen,
it's in our garage.
Yeah, I lived. No, I didn't live there. So I had a friend in college whose smoke detector would constantly beep, even whenever she would change it. Like, she would change the batteries and legitimately it would still beep. I don't know.
Beeping.
Yeah. Yep. It is how it is.
Unfortunately, it's been that way for a while, so I think I tune it out.
Yeah. Yep. I think I heard it like once or twice, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So either I tuned it out also, or it was only there.
Enough.
Yes. So with that, we will open it up to any additional community questions. So if you have any questions, put them into chat. We'll make sure to ask them and talk through them. And I'll just, while we're waiting on additional questions, open it up to you and say if there's anything we didn't talk about or anything else you want to throw out there. You're welcome to throw it out there and just kind of hand you the floor.
There's one thing. It just made me think of it. There wasn't really anything we talked about that triggered it, but at the very beginning, I mentioned how I have kind of a unique perspective on all this, being, multicultural and having Caucasian parents and growing up here and having those cultural identity issues. I think my biggest thing that I would admonish of everybody, who has friends who are Asian or African American or Latino is just to, every once in a while, just like check in on them, whether or not it's something that we consciously are daily struggling with. We do have those moments where, we feel like our ethnicity is perceived negatively, and for us to try and navigate the world and deal with that at the same time gets a little tricky sometimes. I was talking to my mom on the phone, who I don't talk to very often, but I talked to her a few weeks ago, and I was really candid with her. I remember saying it was like right after all that mass murder of all those women. And I said, Mom, I really struggled with cultural identity growing up, and for a long time I think I almost denied my Asian heritage because I didn't want to be seen as different, particularly when I was younger. And I was telling her, I said, even though I didn't grow up in Korea, my time there was really limited, and culturally it was just Kansas City most of my life. And I said, even all those factors in play, I still feel this weird sense of sorrow that I had never felt in my entire life, and just seeing that story and trying to process all the emotions of how it affected me, and in a sense that I felt more connected to my Asian heritage more than I ever have, seeing the communities, those local communities coming together and kind of rally around all those families. They're, being Asian, that's something to be super proud of, actually, and it's, if I ever felt otherwise, that was really, really ignorant of me. And, but that was just kind of something that, kind of really struck me, differently, is that even though, yes, I have those moments where I don't really know where I would categorize myself very specifically, just given my circumstances, like even in those moments, of adversity, I can still relate and still feel the connection to the other Asians, in the world and in my own community. So.
Yeah. It's a great point to check in with one another, generally speaking. And then especially if you have someone who's Asian American, that's something that they're facing, like they probably haven't faced in a while, maybe in their lives, but definitely in a good long while. So it's bringing up all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I can't speak for everybody, but I can say on a personal level, I feel like it's been way worse in the last year or so than it ever has, in my whole life.
Bite Mark said, Dad would be upset about your smoke detector needing a battery. He's a retired fireman.
Well.
So pretend like my dad is your dad and change the battery.
Change it.
Battery and clean your freaking lint traps. Those are the two things. Battery, change the batteries into smoke detectors.
We do that very
clean out your lint traps. Yep, for sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time and having this conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground here, so it was really helpful. Bite Mark said, thank you so much for sharing with us and being part of the community. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I actually am really glad I got to kind of speak on this. I think as even just getting to talk about it, I think in a way that's kind of how I'm coping and dealing with it, in a way that's kind of healing for me. So, so no, this is wonderful.
Yeah, and if you want to connect with Jamie, let me throw out your Twitter one more time, and then also I'm just gonna put out this list of resources as well that we've talked through some of them, and just if you are looking for any additional information or anything like that, feel free to click through those. And there's even that donation option for the memorial funds for the women who were murdered at those salons. So it's all there. Frost said it was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too, Frost. Biters.
Oh, throw out her Twitch too. Give her a follow. There you go. And that's a wrap on this episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I really appreciate Jamie for sharing her experiences and perspectives. Cultural sensitivity isn't about walking on eggshells. It's about recognizing that people's lived experiences are different and making an effort to respect that. Racism, whether it's subtle or blatant, doesn't just disappear because people don't want to talk about it. These conversations matter because ignoring the problem doesn't make it go away. We talked about the harmful impact of stereotypes, the importance of representation, and how the model minority myth is not a compliment, it's a way of dismissing real struggles. If you took anything away from this episode, let it be this. Words matter, awareness matters, and small actions can add up to real change. Whether that's speaking up when you hear something ignorant, making an effort to educate yourself, or just listening when someone shares their lived experience. Those things make a difference. And if this episode hit home for you, I would love to hear your thoughts. What stood out? What are you taking away from this conversation? You can reach out on social media, send me a message, or even share this episode with someone who needs to hear it and then talk about it. If you found this conversation valuable, the best way to support the show is to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. Those are all free things, and that really helps more people find Even Tacos Fall Apart and keep these real, raw conversations going. So if you haven't already, take a minute to rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on. I seriously appreciate it. Thanks for spending your time with me today. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.